Hey guys, Dave from Wolfhard Hobbying here, and today we're going to take a look at painting a glowing magical effect. To serve as an example for this, I'm going to be painting up one of my buddy's Motarks of the Night horses. This one here is going to be Manfred for the vampire counts, so I'm going to make it look like a blood magic effect. And the effect I want to go for is the core of the horse housing the most of the magical energy, so kind of like a glowing engine effect, I guess you can use this for as well. So to get us started, we're going to start in with a base coat of 2 Mephiston red to 1 Caliban green. The Caliban green will desaturate the red and bring it into a maroon color almost, which I really want for this model because it'll give a good blood effect. So I got it loaded up here in my Badger Patriot 105. I really like this airbrush. It seems to be one that a lot of people use, but anyways, that's personal preference on your equipment. So just going to give a nice base coat almost over the entirety of the model, really focusing on where the skulls are, and I'm at a 40 or 30 psi here. And when you are base coating a model or using an airbrush, you don't want to slap a whole bunch of paint on the model right away, as it will start to run and it'll give you a really bad coverage. So I do suggest doing light coats back and forth over the entirety of the model. This also allows you to help with some shading as well, because it gives you control of how much paint is going on. So if you only put a thin coat on, that black primer is going to show through and really darken that red. So here I'm just making sure I'm getting a nice good coverage over the model. The skull's coming off the back of the leg. I want those darker, as I want it to kind of be like the magic effect is wearing off. But inside the chest here, there are these skulls as well, so you want to make sure you really hit those as well. Now in the instructions when building this model, they tell you to paint that before gluing the model together, but with the airbrush you can kind of skip that step and not really worry about it, as the airbrush allows you to get in there. So I am going to be painting the bones the black color, so the red will start showing through, but we're going to go on to our next step here. So we'll let the base color dry really nicely, and then we're going to come in with our next highlight. And for this one here, we're going to come in with we're going to skip a bunch of steps, and we're just going to come in with straight Mephiston red. Now you could highlight it up even more, but I want to get this done quick, so I got it loaded up in my brush here, my airbrush, and just going to focus on the center part of the chest and some other places to give a nice power effect. So when you are going for this gradient effect, don't do what I did here. Always make sure that you check your PSI. My PSI was a little high, and so the paint came spraying out, and as you can see, it put too much on the bottom part there. But that's not too much of an issue, as I will fix that up a little later. So I drop it down to about a 14 PSI at this point. And I started at the bottom, which was another mistake. And you should always kind of start from the center of where you want your gradient to come out of, so that you get that effect. And if you have an issue where, like mine, my PSI was too high and it shot out, it'd be in where the concentrated area of the color is. But essentially that's it for the chest part. Just a little bit of a spray in the middle, working my way up and slowly only releasing a little bit of paint out at a time. So you want to be careful with not letting too much paint out, or it's just going to completely cover up that base coat and not give you this glow effect or this gradient effect. So again, you just flip over the model and pick the center line essentially, and then work your way out. Now airbrushing does take a lot of practice, so I do suggest that if you want to start getting into airbrushing,
I'm not even a master at it or perfected it in any way, but if you want to get into airbrushing, practice. Build a couple models, learn your airbrush, learn how your airbrush works, so that when you start working on bigger models like this, it'll save you a lot of headache. Just so that you know where the paint's coming out. So that's essentially our first layer or highlight, I guess, for this effect. Now I am doing a bit of the glow effect on the neck and the knee parts as well, and I will be doing the arms at the same time. I'm not showing it here because there's no real reason to show it. Just added more time. So as you can see here, there's these little skeletons in the knee joints, and I figured that with it holding the bones of the horse or the mount, whatever it's called, together, that this would have some magical properties to it. So I'm just spraying this very lightly over these skeletons, and then I do the inside of the foot and the legs here. You don't really have to worry about that, because once you start painting up the bone, especially for Manfred, the bones are going to be black, that it will cover up kind of any of the skulls inside. Again, that's a part where they tell you to paint it before you glue it together, but again, with an airbrush you can get in there real easily with your paint. So if you are doing this by brush, please follow the instructions of painting these skulls first. So our next highlight for the glowing effect is going to be Evil Sun's Scarlet. Got it loaded up here. It's kind of a mid-tone between a orange and the red. And there's only a little bit of paint in there, as I'm only concentrating on the center parts of wherever I put the Mephiston red. As that's the only parts I want to have the glowing effect going for it. So wherever you put the Mephiston red, if you're following along with me, or whatever your first highlight off the base color is, you want to just put this in pretty much the center line and work it out a little bit, not too much. Again, personal preference, you can do this however you want, take it how far you want. But again, if you're following along with me, that's what I do, is just a little spray. As you can see on that skeleton there, just a little bit of a spray on the chest part, as I don't want these skulls to be the predominant focus of the model. Right now this effect is getting a little lost, but it'll change once you paint the bone. So coming in next with Wild Rider Red. That's a tongue twister there. Again, just putting a little bit in the airbrush, and focusing more on the center parts of, essentially just the center part of the model. So kind of just doing one quick line of this color. So you don't need a lot, and it does tend to go in more of the orange spectrum with a hint of red. So that's why this is going to be the last highlight color I do. You don't want to put too much of this in, as it will start to become more orange. And I did lower my PSI here. That's why I put the model down. Lowered the PSI to, I think, about 5, because I want to get just a thin gradient line. And as you can see there, I sprayed on way too much on the neck part. But a lot of it got on the bone, which again is going to be painted later, so it's not that big of an issue. So as you can see, it's fairly simple with the airbrush to get this effect done. So that was it for the glow effect. Now my next step is coming in with the bloodletter glaze. I would suggest, instead of doing this step, use a blood for the blood god, or what the technical paint that's kind of the glossy red. This will just kind of help tie those transitions together, and bring a little bit of those oranges a little bit brighter. Now I put it on a little too heavy, so I'm cleaning it up here. You don't want this too thick,
But if you are using the glaze, then what I suggest is once the model is completely done and you have it varnished, to then come in with a gloss varnish over all of this if you want to make it look wet, and that blood effect as well. But again, blood for the blood god would probably be the best thing to use. I didn't have any on hand, that's why I'm using the blood letter glaze. So I'm just hitting it everywhere on the model. So with just a little bit of drying time, you can see here I got the nice glow effect going. It is kind of hard to see the glowing as the ribs are the same color, but they will be painted black in another video. So thanks guys for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed this. Comment, subscribe, like, follow me on Facebook, guys. Links will be in video description below. I do have a Patreon account, so if you guys want to show support that way, I'd be really thankful, and have a nice day.